What would you do if you came home from overseas to find the home you built gone, sold behind your back by the one person you trusted most? That beach house wasn't just property. It was my father's legacy, my refuge, and the place where I proposed. She thought I'd never find out. She thought I'd stay silent. But she forgot one thing: I don't let betrayal go unanswered. My name is Emmeline Carter, and when I left for my contract work overseas, I thought the hardest part would be missing home. I was wrong. The hardest part was coming back to find my home, our beach house, gone. Not rented, not damaged, sold. And not by some clerical mistake or legal fluke. Sold by my own wife, Rachel, while I was thousands of miles away. No warning, no conversation, just gone. That house wasn't just real estate. It was sacred. It was where my father taught me how to fish, where I first kissed Rachel, and the only place I ever truly felt peace. She knew all that, and she still sold it. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly see coming, was that I had a plan of my own. One she wouldn't see until it was too late. Before I boarded that plane, we shared one final night at the house. The sun melted into the waves like fire sinking into glass. Rachel was warm, affectionate, almost too affectionate in hindsight. She kissed me hard, like she was sealing something final. I remember standing on that wooden deck, watching the horizon, trying to freeze the moment in my mind. That house had been in my family for nearly 3 decades. I trusted her with it, the same way I trusted her with my life. But while I was putting in 16-hour days in a foreign country to help fund our future, she was wiping mine clean off the map. And she thought I'd never know. She thought I'd come back, take the hit, and move on. But she forgot something about me. I don't lose quietly. And I sure as hell don't forgive betrayal. From the very beginning, that beach house meant more to me than any paycheck, promotion, or prize. My father built it back in the late 80s, board by board, during weekends and stolen vacation days. It wasn't fancy, but it was ours, perched on a quiet stretch of coastline with creaky steps, sun-bleached siding, and a soul you could feel the second you walked in. When Rachel and I got engaged, she said she loved it even more than I did. We spent 2 summers renovating it together. New kitchen counters, modern lighting, fresh paint, every detail felt like stitching dreams into drywall. She picked the curtains. I built the deck. We laughed over floor plans, argued over tiles, and kissed in every corner. It was never about the money. That house was supposed to be our future, our family's anchor. So when she sold it, when she signed those papers without so much as a phone call, it wasn't just betrayal. It was like watching her erase our entire life. The first time I sensed something was wrong, I was on a conference call at 3 a.m. local time. My bank had called twice, but I ignored it. Figured it was another fraud alert or some billing error. But then Rachel missed our weekly video chat. That was rare. I sent a few texts. No answer. When she finally replied a day later, it was short. Rushed. Sorry, crazy day. Talk soon. That's when the calls started. Our old neighbor Carol messaged me on Facebook asking where we were moving. I stared at the screen like it was written in code. I messaged back, "What move?" She replied, "Saw the truck yesterday. Looked like you guys were clearing out." My stomach dropped. I tried calling Rachel. Straight to voicemail. Again and again. I reached out to our realtor friend, just to be safe. When he called me back, he didn't sound casual. "Emmeline," he said, "did you know your house is listed as sold?" My throat went dry. No, I did not. Rachel finally answered my call 2 days later, her voice laced with manufactured calm. "Look, Em, I didn't want to do this over the phone," she began. "But the house, it was just too much to manage alone. It made sense to sell." I sat in silence on the other end, staring at a cracked wall in my hotel room like I could punch through it and reach her. Too much to manage? I asked. You couldn't wait 3 more months? Her response made my blood boil. It was just a property, Emmeline. We can get another one. Just a property. The place where we celebrated our anniversary. Where we scattered my father's ashes in the backyard under his favorite pine tree. Where I had planned to bring our future kids. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She had reduced decades of memories and generational love into a line on a real estate contract. It was like she decided that my entire past no longer mattered. The more I dug, the worse it got. Rachel had listed the house without telling me. Not only that, she'd forged my digital signature on a power of attorney document, an old one we'd never even used. I had trusted her with access to my files in case of emergencies while I was overseas. Instead, she'd used that trust to push through a full cash sale. Closed. Recorded. Final. She hadn't even waited for a high offer. The buyer snagged it for under market value, quick and easy. I stared at the scanned document sent by a clerk at the county office and felt like I was looking at my own obituary. Signed, sealed, and gone. And the worst part? She'd moved most of the money into a new personal account I didn't even know existed. No shared savings. No trace. Just a clean digital cut, like she'd been preparing for this all along. This wasn't an impulsive decision. It was a plan. Executed while I was powerless to stop her. After that, she stopped answering. No texts. No emails. Not even a damn voicemail. I must have called 20 times in 1 week, but it was like she'd vanished. Ghosted her own husband like a bad date. My friends tried to console me, said maybe she panicked, maybe she was scared. But I knew better. Rachel was many things, but she wasn't scared. She was deliberate. Calculated. When she didn't want to deal with conflict, she simply disappeared from it. That was her move. But I wasn't a man she could just disappear from. I booked my return flight that night. Paid extra to cut the contract short. I didn't care about the fees. All I knew was that the woman I left behind wasn't the woman I was flying back to. And when I landed, I wouldn't be looking for explanations. I'd be looking for justice. Silent, surgical, and absolute. I didn't just come back angry, I came back prepared. Before I even landed, I had a plan forming in my mind. I wanted to know who bought the house and why the sale had been pushed through so fast. So I dug. The buyer was a man named Jason Morrow, mid-40s, private investor, just closed on a waterfront home as is for cash. I found his LinkedIn. Mutual connections. I sent a casual message, posing as a consultant scouting for property insights. He replied within hours. Friendly. Open. Said the house was a surprising opportunity, and that the previous owner, Rachel, had been eager to close quickly. He mentioned the sale was smooth, no husband involved. That last part stuck with me. No husband involved. That's how she pitched it. She'd sold our home like I didn't exist. I asked Jason for a meeting. Just a quiet chat, under the pretense of learning more about the neighborhood. What I really wanted was to look him in the eye. I needed to see who was living in my father's house. After setting up the meeting with Jason, I went through every email account, cloud folder, and shared drive Rachel and I had ever used. I needed to understand how far this betrayal went. What I found stunned me. There were email chains dating back 6 months, long before I'd even left for my overseas contract. Conversations with agents, lawyers, even a moving company. She had planned this well in advance. One message to her cousin mentioned she'd been ready for a new life and tired of waiting around. Another thread showed her inquiring about condos in Arizona, under her maiden name. She wasn't overwhelmed or impulsive. She was calculating. She wanted a clean break, a fresh bank account, and a new name. And the house? It was leverage. Funding for the next chapter. I felt sick reading it. This wasn't a mistake. It was premeditated, cold and quiet. I closed the laptop and stared at the wall, gripping the armrest so hard my knuckles went white. She didn't just leave me. She tried to erase me. The bank statement hit like a slap. Dozens of withdrawals, small, calculated, and spread across 3 new accounts. All recently opened under Rachel's name. She'd transferred our joint savings first, then the proceeds from the house sale. Bit by bit, she'd funneled everything out of reach. There was no obvious panic in her moves. No reckless spending. Just cold, quiet betrayal. One account was linked to a new LLC registered in Arizona. A fake business name. Likely a front. I called the bank. Explained the situation. They couldn't legally reverse anything without a court order, but the woman on the phone sounded sympathetic. She told me, off the record, that Rachel had visited the branch in person to close our accounts 2 weeks before I got home. She even smiled, apparently. I hung up and sat still for a long time. I wasn't just broke. I'd been played. And she hadn't looked back once. That's when it hit me. If she wanted a clean escape, I'd make sure it got messy. When I pulled up to the beach house, it wasn't mine anymore. I parked a block away and walked the final stretch on foot. The porch light was different. A new welcome mat. Fresh flowers in a pot I didn't recognize. Through the living room window, I saw a woman's silhouette. Tall, blonde, unfamiliar. It wasn't Rachel. It was Jason's partner, I assumed. I stood there, heart pounding, feeling like a ghost haunting my own memories. The swing I'd built with my father was gone. The old wind chime that Rachel used to say sounded like summer had been replaced. Everything familiar had been scrubbed clean. I didn't even step on the lawn. I just stood on the sidewalk and stared until my chest tightened. I wasn't here to cause a scene. Not yet. I turned and walked back to my car, every step harder than the last. I had no keys, no place, no answers, and worst of all, no justice. But that was about to change. I hadn't come home to mourn. I'd come to reclaim. A few days later, I finally got Rachel on the phone. Her voice was calm, even cheerful. "I figured you'd be upset," she said, like she'd forgotten I was a human being and not just a line item in her plan. But this was for the best. We were growing apart anyway. That line punched through my chest. Growing apart. I was overseas working 12-hour days to give us security. I wasn't the one who'd stopped returning calls or planned an escape route. I asked her one question. "Did you ever think I'd find out?" Her silence was all the answer I needed. That's when I brought up the accounts, the LLC, and the fake business filings. Her calm cracked for a second, then she sighed. "You don't understand. I had to do this for me." She didn't just sell the house. She sold our marriage, our future, every vow we ever made. And in her mind, it was all justified. That's when I knew this wasn't about property anymore. It was war. I met Jason Morrow the next day at a small cafe near the waterfront. He was polite, polished, one of those guys who shakes your hand like he's closing a deal even when you're just ordering coffee. I told him I was interested in his experience buying in the area, played the part of a curious investor. He didn't suspect a thing. As he talked about the house, I nodded, listening closely. Then he mentioned something that made my stomach twist. It was weird, honestly. She was eager to close, wouldn't let me do an inspection, and pushed everything through her lawyer. Never mentioned a husband. I let that hang in the air for a moment. Then I asked if he'd looked at the original deed. He hadn't. Most buyers wouldn't. That was my in. I thanked him, shook his hand, and left. What he didn't know was that the house had a legal clause buried in the original filing, one that Rachel clearly hadn't read. And that clause, it still had my name on it. The beach house was originally listed under a dual ownership clause. My father had insisted on it before he passed, a legacy provision that protected the house from being sold or transferred without both co-owners' notarized approval, even if one was away or incapacitated. Rachel had forged an old power of attorney, but it didn't override the original deed protections. Her lawyer had either missed it or ignored it. I spent 2 days gathering the original documents, tracing old signatures, and speaking with a legal expert my father once trusted. He confirmed what I'd hoped. The sale, though recorded, had legal gaps wide enough to crack open. If I filed the right motion, the sale could be contested. Not easily, not quickly, but legally. And in the meantime, any equity she pulled could be frozen under dispute. I wasn't just going to fight this. I was going to do it by the book, piece by piece. Because if Rachel wanted a clean break, she was about to find out just how tangled her exit really was. Once I had the legal foundation in place, I filed a formal dispute of ownership with the county. It wasn't a small process. There were affidavits, timelines, and sworn testimony, but I was methodical, patient. Everything Rachel had rushed, I handled with precision. Jason, now caught in the middle, wasn't pleased, but he wasn't hostile either. When my lawyer served the documents and explained the clause, he was clearly blindsided. "So I bought a house that wasn't legally for sale?" he asked, jaw tight. I didn't gloat. I simply nodded. "You bought a lie," I said. "But I'm not here to take it out on you." He respected that. Within a week, we were in negotiations, not over the house, but over terms. If the court sided with me, he'd lose it. If he backed out, he could sue Rachel instead. Either way, I wasn't walking away empty-handed. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. She had sold my house. Now I was going to unravel the very foundation she thought she'd built without me. The entire scheme hinged on a single document, a digital power of attorney file that Rachel had dug up from a shared drive we hadn't touched in years. It wasn't notarized. It wasn't valid. But it had been enough to slip past a lazy broker and a rushed buyer. That one forged signature was her biggest mistake, and now it was my weapon. My attorney filed a fraud complaint with the State Real Estate Board and presented a forensics report proving the signature had been lifted from an old insurance form. That alone could invalidate the entire sale. Rachel's new life in Arizona was built on sand, and the more I pulled, the faster it began to crumble. She'd signed with the wrong name on one document, submitted mismatched dates on another, and had even listed the property as unencumbered, despite my legal co-ownership. It wasn't just betrayal. It was sloppy. And when she realized the court was looking into it, she finally called me. But she wasn't apologizing. She was panicking. Her voice was flat when she spoke, but I could hear the fear tucked underneath. "We don't have to do this in court, Emmeline. We can settle this privately." I let the silence sit for a moment. Then I said, "We're way past private." She'd brought this fight into the legal arena the moment she signed a forged document and sold off a legacy she had no right to touch. My legal team wasn't backing down. We found another angle too, a marital asset clause that voided any sale of shared property during an active legal marriage without spousal notification. Rachel had missed it. Or maybe she thought I'd never come back to fight. Either way, her case was crumbling. I wasn't out for revenge anymore. I was out for restoration. To make sure she never did this to anyone else. To make sure the law remembered that not every betrayal ends in silence. Some end in court. Some end with a ruling. And some, like this one, end with everything taken back. The day of the hearing arrived like a storm front. Rachel walked in with her lawyer and a carefully rehearsed expression of calm, as if she still believed charm could soften facts. But courtrooms don't care about charm. They care about paper trails, and mine was airtight. My attorney laid everything out: the deed clause, the forged signature, the hidden accounts, the fake LLCs. Rachel's lawyer tried to argue duress, said she acted out of emotional distress while I was abroad. But then came the real surprise. Jason Morrow took the stand. He testified that Rachel misrepresented her marital status, ignored disclosure protocols, and refused a property inspection. His voice was even, but his words were sharp. By the time he was done, the room was dead silent. The judge asked if there were any final comments. I stood and said one thing: this wasn't about money. It was about trust, and the law shouldn't reward people who destroy it. The judge nodded, and then came the ruling. The sale was void. The title was mine again. Rachel didn't speak to me as we left the courthouse. She stared at the floor, lips tight, her entire plan dissolved in front of her. I should have felt vindicated, but all I felt was hollow. She thought it was over, thought she could sell my past, steal my future, and disappear without consequence. But she underestimated one thing: I wasn't the man she married anymore. Overseas changed me. Betrayal changed me. And the man standing in front of her now wasn't interested in revenge for its own sake. He wanted closure. I filed a civil suit for damages, citing emotional distress, fraudulent transfer of marital assets, and real estate misrepresentation. I didn't care if I won money. I cared that she couldn't just walk away untouched. And when her bank accounts were frozen and her new life in Arizona went up in smoke, I finally saw something I hadn't in months: regret. Not for what she did, but for getting caught. I didn't keep the beach house. After everything, it didn't feel like home anymore. Too many memories. Too much pain nailed into the walls. I sold it, not for revenge, not for profit, but for peace. I took the money and bought a small, modern place just up the coast. Quiet, clean, mine. I rebuilt from the foundation up, just like my father taught me. I went back to the sea, picked up a few freelance jobs, and found myself again in the stillness of early mornings and crashing waves. People sometimes ask if I'd ever trust someone again. The answer is yes, but differently. Love, I've learned, isn't just about sharing your life. It's about knowing where to draw the line when someone crosses it. I still believe in commitment, but now I believe more in self-respect. Rachel didn't just force me to let go of a house. She forced me to reclaim myself. And in doing that, she gave me something I never expected: freedom. In the end, she sold the house, but I took back far more. I took back my name, my future, my power. Rachel underestimated me because she thought I'd stay quiet. But silence isn't the same as weakness. Sometimes it's the sound of a storm building. I won the case, froze her accounts, reversed the sale, exposed her lies. But most importantly, I walked away without hate in my chest, just clarity. She sold my house like it was just wood and glass. But I reminded her what it really was: a legacy. And when she tried to steal that from me, I didn't shout or scream. I simply outmaneuvered her. Now, she's left with nothing but legal bills and a reputation in tatters. Me, I've got a new place, a clean record, and a clear conscience. She thought I'd never come back, but I did. And I made sure she'd never forget what happens when you betray someone who builds things that last. What would you have done if someone sold your home behind your back? Have you ever had to take revenge the smart way? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more jaw-dropping tales, and don't forget to turn on the bell so you never miss the next twist. Thanks for watching the story.